Hi everyone, it's Emma here, as you probably know from the Unworn School Shoes. So I've decided, rather than going in for a full-blown podcast, I'm going to do a few Zoom interviews over the next few months. Whenever, you know me, I don't like to plan too far ahead. And today, some of you may already have seen Janey around. She is a member on my page, but yeah, I have got the amazing Janey Holliday. But she is here in her kind of personal capacity as opposed to her brilliant business which she runs, which you can look at on janeyholliday.com. But this is more about herself and her own life. So Janey, how are you today? Honest answer.
All I can say is thank God I'm a compartmentalizing queen. I'm all right, actually. I'm all right. I actually spent the morning at the beach, so I am feeling okay.
Lucky.
I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, that's brilliant. So a few of you may know this, probably some of you won't. I actually met Janey on a beach a few years ago where she lives in the lovely town of Sidmouth, where I've been going all my life in Devon. And we've struck up a friendship and we have an awful lot in common, both good, bad and stressful. So I'm just going to go through a few quick questions. It's not going to be a long session. So firstly, if I may, can I ask you how you found school? How was your school life?
My primary school was pretty good, actually, if I'm honest. I went to a village primary school in the middle of Kent. I think there was about 18 people in my class.
Oh,
Had
lovely.
lovely teachers. We had a garden. It was, had a very happy childhood in my primary school. I would say I was always a bit away with the fairies, and I was always wanting to learn, so I kind of had that sort of daydreamer and kind of wanting to learn thing all at once. But my primary school experience generally was very good. I struggled with friendships, actually, and now I have a neurodiverse daughter. I can start to join the pieces up, but my primary school was great. In Kent there is a grammar stream system. And in my day, it was 13 plus, which meant you sat your 13 plus. So you had to do 2 years before you went to the grammar school. And I went to an awful comprehensive school. And I was very, very unhappy there. Really unhappy. I was bullied. I just wanted to get out of it. I have no real happy memories of that time. But I got very much into drama and stuff like that. And then when I went to the grammar school, I was never kind of really academic, but I still struggled with friendships a lot, and I still was bullied a lot as well. But I was really into like activities, and I got on really well with the teachers. I was never an A kind of grade student, but I was a youth MP. Like I was really involved in all of the fun stuff, the activities, like the stage, the presenting, the talking, the debate team, the newspaper.
Yeah.
Like I was really into that stuff, because I really loved all that. But yeah, I mean, it was, I struggled with maths and science and all of that, but I got my A to C GCSEs. I did A levels, and generally speaking, I had really, really lovely teachers. And so it kind of was what it was. And then I went to university and I loved university. I really, really did. So I definitely struggled at points at school, like I say, but my primary school was great. And yeah, when I think about the difference between what happened then and now, I mean it is worlds away. But yeah, I mean, but secondary school was definitely my harder part.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I mean, we've been friends, as I said, for a few years, and I don't think obviously, I've never really asked you that before. So I'm sorry to hear you were bullied, but it sounds to me like you definitely got your kind of kicks from school out of all the creative side, and what you've just said pretty sums up why you do what you do now, doesn't it? I think.
Oh, well, absolutely. And I mean, even it's really interesting. I moved back to Kent when my twins were 3, and I went back to where I grew up, and I was always really haunted by that kind of bullying
Yeah.
experience. And I don't know, I kind of faced the demons in some. I always felt I was different at school. I always felt I didn't fit in. I always felt like there was just some kind of me versus them. but I was able to channel that into like the really good stuff.
Hmm.
And I've always been a big picture person and a big dreamer. And I kind of, I don't know, I was always excited about what lied ahead of school. So I knew it was like a temporary thing. But yeah, everything I do now in my
Yeah,
work, when
yeah,
you think about it, like, do you know what I mean? And it's really interesting because I'm going on this big journey at the moment with myself and my awareness of myself, and how I'm very sociable, but I like to be the person that's kind of inspiring or motivating or helping, or when I'm side by side, unless it's like select few people like you and a couple of other very close, I don't like that big group. I was invited to a networking event the other
oh
like
God.
last week with 40 women. I was just like, oh my God, no way. But if you want me to come and talk and speak, I'm there. So
Yeah,
it is interesting looking back. But I just really filled my life with lots of activities I was interested in.
yeah,
And I was actually made, I was made one of like 12 like top prefects, and I was the only one that wasn't an A, like the A grade typical academic, but
yeah,
that's because I was all doing all the other stuff. And that was
yeah.
really encouraged, and I think that was really good.
Okay, cool. And then perhaps I maybe should have asked this first, but share with us, like, what's your family setup? You know, who do you live with? That kind of thing.
So I am so I'm a single mum. I've been a single mum to my twins, who are nearly 16, for nearly 15 years. So I became a single mum to them when they were 13 months old. Went through a horrific divorce. It was a pretty brutal time actually, but I bloody love being a mum. I love my kids, and even though it's hard, like, I get through with happiness and all the rest of it. Um, and then I had my daughter by myself, which is
Yay.
a whole other zoo. In 2016, her dad bailed, so I brought her up by myself. And I live, as you said, in Sidmouth. So it's me, my daughter who just turned 8. She is diagnosed with autism and ADHD and sensory processing disorder as well. And then my twins, like I said, they'll be 16 in September, so they're at the end of year 10. They're neurotypical. They just crack on with stuff. They quite like school. And then my daughter, so I deregistered from school last September. So it's just us. The three musketeers became the four musketeers. My house is full of love and laughter, but it is very intense and it can get very, very messy. And my mum and dad live around the corner, so they live a couple of minutes away. My dad's really hands-on, has been hands-on with my kids. You know, so yeah, so it's a little batshit crazy is how I would describe it.
Then
But it,
that might, sorry, that might lead on to kind of the next thing I was going to ask you. Can you give us a typical, if there is a typical, like 24 hours? I know Tabitha, bless her, can get up early and, you know, tell us about an average day for you, because, as you know, you
can
work
I
as
do,
well. So.
can I do a quick before I took her out of school and
Yeah,
after? Is that
sorry. Yeah,
okay?
of course. Yeah.
So before I took my daughter out of school, she would be up 80 to 90% of the time between 2
Yeah.
and 4 in every day between 2 and 4 in the morning. And then I would entertain her for 5 hours before going to breakfast club and me starting work. My daughter finds it very hard to focus. She has to move very quickly between things. We could do 40 to 50 activities before even school. I would often drop her to breakfast club and cry my way home to the gym. I always put at a non-negotiable me hour as soon as I dropped her off to breakfast club. And then, of course, being up between 2 and 4 in the morning, pick up, and the evenings were just horrendous. So I used to pay local girls, teenage girls, 5, 6 quid an hour to come and like have her, just so that I could get on with things. Otherwise, it was just too difficult. The complexity of ADHD and autism and sensory processing combined is quite a big one. In terms of, you know, she often needs things, you know, like I say, brain really fast, but then sensory meltdowns. And I would say this time 2 years ago, I was pretty much on my last legs as somebody that has always kind of managed to cope quite well. You know, I'm
Yeah.
a mindset coach, I've got good energy. There's only so much you can live like that, right? weekends, I'd wake up at the weekends and just be like, oh my God. My twins, actually, to be fair, a couple of years ago were a lot easier than they are now. Oh my God, the teenage years. But nowadays, I took her out of school because it just got so bad. And it was like, I can't carry on living like this. Like I'm going to be 6 foot under. So now it's hard, but in a different way. Um, so normally now my daughter, I mean, I give her melatonin, Emma, as you know. Without giving her melatonin, I don't know what I do. So
Yeah, I understand.
so if I start in the evening, she goes to bed at 7:45, and I have an hour and a half of, I used to call it my me time, until I worked with somebody recently who's like, this is your healing time, Janey. This is the time that you're actually healing yourself from everything you're doing in the day, and probably healing myself over everything in the last few years. So I have that time. I'm asleep by 9:30. And then at the moment, she'll get up between sort of 5 and 6 on average, which for me is a lion, right?
Yeah, it's a lot
Um,
later.
and she is now, she's just so much self-regulated because she's not at school. I take a swim for an hour and a half in the afternoon. So now I'm kind of juggling home education and my business. It's not perfect. The priority is my business at the moment, but I'm doing lots of, we do lots of home ed stuff in the swimming pool. So I'll do a bit of work, she'll entertain herself, we'll do a bit of fun movement with home ed stuff. I tend to mix and match between work and stuff with her. We go out, let's say afternoons, but the whole afternoon next month at the park. So my work is very flexible, so I can, and I'm very, very hyper focused with my work. Like when I'm focused, I'm productive, I lock in, I time block a lot. So our days are very bitty, but I manage them relatively well. And then in the evening it's a bit crazy because my twins are back and noisy and all the rest of it. I've actually just, I don't know if you know this, but I think I told you, I've reshuffled my home.
Yeah.
Actually, and people are like, you've done what? Are you mad? So I've made my lounge Tabitha's playroom. And then that means my boys can have their own room. And then I've got this room, which I work in and everything else. And
Yeah.
people are like, how could you do that? And it's like, because this is what is going to keep my family regulated, the intensity down. We've all got our own space. So
Yeah.
it is a huge compromise. None of my kids eat the same food, none of them. So I mean, I'm cooking 3 or 4 different meals. But I exercise every morning. This is my, so I live a few minutes walk from the beach. So I have at least half an hour of power walking in the morning for me. So when I wake up, Tabitha's really great in the morning now because we're not getting her ready for school and all the rest of it. So I can have that slot for me. And then we swim every afternoon, and I, like this morning, I took some videos at the beach with one of my twins at 6:30 in the morning, doing a bit of work stuff, Instagram stuff. Then I came back, then I took Tabitha to the beach, and now did some work, now I'm here. So I tend to sort of, no one day is the same.
Yeah.
But I've taught myself that, what do I need to do today? What's my most valued priority? But as you know, when stuff hits the fan, which it can do, then, if she has a meltdown, which still happens, even though she's not at school, of course it does. But yeah, it's a roller coaster. It changes every day. But each day, I always ask myself, like, what's the biggest priority? What's my intention of how I want to show up? And just understand that you have to flex it, don't you? So
Yeah.
no one day. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the same with all mothers of children like we have, SEN children. You never quite know what's going to happen every day, and you can start with the best intentions and something can lead to meltdown, or something just random happens, and it just can change what you think you're doing. So,
and I think it's like, even yesterday, like, for some reason Tabitha had a funny dream the other night, and then she got freaked out at the park, and it's like, you know what it's like, that's it, you got to do it. And so it's like switching, like, right, now I've just got to change planning. I go with it a lot, so I am quite good at being flexible and adaptable. But then it's also noticing, isn't it, like when your child, for me, I have a saying, I've said this before, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. If you have a child that is not regulated in your house as a SEND mum, it impacts everybody. So every day it is geared around, right? Although the most valued priorities are like maybe my work stuff or whatever, the big priority is keeping my daughter self-regulated.
yeah.
And so, like, like the other day, I could just see her go. You can just see the domino effect. It's like, right, I've got to go to the park after dinner. I've got to drive to the village park because the park in town is too busy. Like, it's this constant, it is, for me, every day is the key thing is, the more regulated my daughter is, the better everything is. And that
Yeah.
is what I've learned to just roll with, you know, and it can change at any time.
Yeah, definitely. And then within that kind of answer, you did touch on kind of your time or healing, as you called it. I like that. I haven't heard that before. So just to expand on that, to perhaps give other parents who've got, they may not have exactly the same scenario. A lot of parents listening to this have probably got children slightly older maybe who are struggling with their mental health, and obviously that's a huge worry, isn't it, um on us parents, us carers, and I think you had the foresight, and that's one of the reasons you maybe took your daughter Tabitha out of school, because you could see what was probably going to come. But how, so in your most difficult times, so expand a bit on what you try and do to keep your mind positive, or yourself, self-awareness, self-care.
I mean, I think uh, I always say this because I was a mindset coach
Yeah.
before I had Tabitha and before I went down the SEN journey. I don't know how I'd do it without the mindset strategies that I put into place daily. But it's not just the thinking, it's all of those kind of. So I shared before that when it was really difficult with Tabitha after Breakfast Club, I would cry all the way to the gym. That is actually a really good thing to do. I think women feel like they can't cry. That crying is wonderful because it gets
I
it out
spent
and it
months
makes you
crying.
feel oxytocin, right? So, and I used to be in the health and fitness industry as well. So I know that, and this is, I was diagnosed with ADHD, as you know, last December, and there's possibly the ASD that I'm chatting to Hayley about at the moment. But I think I kept myself regulated for all those years when I was partying and running a fitness business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I 8 hours of exercise a day, and I'd still be going clubbing for 8 hours at night. But it's so for me, I'm very aware that I have to move in order for me to be able to function. So I would go to the gym, and if I didn't have anything in my tank to go to the gym, I would give myself permission to sit in the jacuzzi. It's all about giving yourself permission. It's really knowing what it is that you need.
Yeah.
So it's what I call, I built my optimum week around my challenges. This is some of the stuff I teach, but this is what I practice day to day. Like I know where my peak energy is with my work, so I tend to work, in the morning. Going to bed early. I mean, people are like, you climb into bed at 7 o'clock. Yes, have you stepped into my world?
Yeah,
Like seriously. I don't have
exactly.
a partner. I don't have a partner that goes, go and have a lie in, or I'll take. And I think there are benefits of being a single parent for sure. But so I go to bed early. I eat impeccably. I don't know how I'd navigate this if I wasn't looking after myself. So and like the healing time, that's my time to defrag. I always have something fun to look forward to in terms of like just something that brings me joy, whether that's like I also this is really important, have allocated time to work on my life. So last Saturday I spent 3.5 hours. I'm a member of the local harbour hotel gym and spa. It's 60 quid a month or whatever. It's best 60 quid I spend. And I sat outside the outdoor swimming pool with my big kind of, Rhino desk pad. These are these giant kind of notepads, and I work on my life and I get things out of my head. I journal for 10, 15 minutes in the evening. Kitchen discos, playing loud music, dancing, like, even if it's with my earphones on, singing along to Celine Dion, whatever brings you joy, like do it, because that balances out the stress.
Mhm.
And also I think going what you said, worry, stress, overwhelm, I'm very good at knowing that being stressed and worried and overwhelmed, A, is thinking, and B, doesn't change anything or help anything. So I'm very good at compartmentalizing not just time but emotions. And I've said this before in your group, but this is part of the self-care, which is I operate from a place of trust. I trust that everything's going to be okay. So even when it's really difficult, and I have that little motto that you've heard me say before, it's not her fault. This is temporary and I've got this.
Yeah.
So that in itself just takes the edge off everything. So it's sort of it's making sure that, and also micro joys, right? Micro joys are really important. So that could be sitting out. It's something I call the next best thing. Like, I'd love to be able to go out for a walk or weekend away. I can't do that. I can't leave my daughter more than a couple of hours, Emma, with anyone, as you know.
Mm.
So it's what's the next best thing. So, you know, I go and sit in my front garden with my cup of tea and I listen to the birds. Like, all of those little things help balance out a really, really crazy day. And you've heard me the way I talk, the tone of voice, self-kindness.
Yeah,
Self-kindness,
definitely. Yeah.
not being guilty about anything, putting my focus what I can control, let go of the rest. All of this stuff is massively, massively helpful. And I think the final thing I want to say about this, which is, again, is, you know, I'm trying to be Janey, not Janey the coach, but it's hard because that's who I am. But when human beings are stressed, they need calm, optimism, and energy. Like, that's what you need. So every day, how can I be calmer? How can I be optimistic? How can I fill my cup and give myself good energy? And I think that is how, you know, it's, and sometimes it is a bubble bath, or it's being sat in Lidl car park for an extra 5 minutes. I'll leave Tabitha with my twins for, you know what I mean, a half an hour. I'll whiz up and I'll just sit in the car. Oh
Yeah.
God, it's just 3 minutes. Oh, quiet, you know. So I pack my days and my weeks with self-care and self-kindness and trust and optimism, and everything's going to be okay. So it's kind of goes back to what we were talking about, school thing earlier. Like, even though things weren't ideal for me at school, I kind of knew that what was coming
Yeah.
is going to.
Yeah.
Plus, part of my self-care is in my head, starting to redesign my life moving forwards, and I'm actually choosing to do that with excitement. So again, it's mindset for me is a huge part of self-care.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get you. You know, I'd have struggled, and I know I've told you this, with staying calm. You know, in certain days when you're very stressed, you're tired, and you've got a child that's very strong-willed and pushing it. But yeah, it's having that, being able, and it's not easy for people, I know, but it's, you know, I really admire, and you've helped me. Some of the things I watch, the kind of, you know, this isn't forever. You know, often on your voice notes, you've said those kind of words, you know, this will pass, kind of thing. And even though at the time you're kind of stuck in your bubble, and I think, especially for people like us who are lone parents in the house, we can't just say in the middle of a crisis meltdown, I'm going out for a walk for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or I'm going here, I'm going there, without planning it. And that's what makes it, I think, extra hard. You know, I know there's probably parents out there who maybe have a partner who doesn't help the situation in other ways. So we're lucky in the way that we have control over what we're going to do, aren't we, both of us? But, you know, there's pros and cons for all the situations, isn't there?
Oh my God, absolutely. And I think it's also, and again, this is part mindset, but part self-care. It's being in your own lane and not looking what anyone else is doing. And you know,
Yeah.
it's amazing how
Yeah.
it makes us in our head. Like, I can't take my daughter to a supermarket. You know, it's near impossible to do that. It's so stressful for her. It's just a nightmare. Like, just that in itself is a massive block, you know. I'm really lucky that as of the last 2 months, my twins are nearly 16. For the first time ever, I've been able to leave her with them. It can only be for
Yeah.
30 minutes. It can only be in the morning because she's in a better place in the morning because she's naturally an early bird. But it's like that breakthrough. It's like, oh my God, that breakthrough. And even for me, like, every time I leave the house, apart from now I can do this in the morning, I have to pay for childcare. Like, it might, you know, and I found teenagers. I've got this amazing 12-year-old girl. This is a really good tip, and I share this with all my SEND mum clients. Look for solutions. Like, I always think, like, what do I need here? What could change? What have I not found? And that's how I got those girls looking after her. So, like, tomorrow I've got this girl that she comes for 4.5 hours. So I work for a bit, and then I have a bit of time for me. Like, that's the best money I spend. Like,
Yeah.
forget handbags and shoes and whatever. Like, to be able to leave my child with someone where she's regulated and looks forward to her, and she's a random 12-year-old girl I met in some
Oh,
park,
yeah.
you know what I mean? So weird. But it's like all of that stuff. So, and I think as well, Emma, you totally normalize these compromises. You
Yeah.
totally normalize. It's amazing how you adapt and adjust and flex and tolerate things that you just, and then within a few months you don't even realize you're doing it. And I think
Yeah.
that's why self-compassion, self-kindness is so. I remember when my boys started they were going into year 1 at primary school, and their teacher, she was quite old for a primary school teacher. She was like in her late 50s. And she said, oh, it's the little things, isn't it? And I was like, what? She goes, well, as a single parent, you can't just go and fill your car up with petrol on a Sunday night. All those little things as a single parent, that are then exacerbated when you've got a child that you can't just, you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
so but that's why you've got to look after yourself. That's why you've got
Yeah.
to do things that make you feel good, even if small things to to help you out.
Yeah. No, you definitely struck a something in my head then when you were saying about, over time we constantly make all these compromises. And when I was doing Annabelle's DLA forms for this year, well, luckily it's been agreed till for a few years now, but you obviously have to sit and think about how much care you put into a day. And even though she's doing much better in many ways, you think, oh my God, I actually deal with that every day. And it actually, I know parents have said on the group, it's like, oh my God, it's just how much we are coping with. And bit by bit, we take it for granted that that's just part of what we need to do every day.
Yeah,
So we shall do a bit more of a general question. And so it's more about the current education system. I mean, we could probably talk for hours on this. Maybe we should do another one, but if you could summarize what I mean, what are your thoughts? It's obviously, and that's a bit of an open question. Is that all right to ask?
I know exactly where I'm going to start with this.
Okay, great.
Even as a mindset coach, I work with women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who have spent their whole adult life feeling that they're not good enough because nobody pulled out their fucking amazing talent and strengths, right? This is the problem. We are all wildly different people. Some of
Yeah,
us are left brain, some of us are right brain, some of us are both, right? Some of us, and this whole, like, it's just heartbreaking to think how many millions of people in this world are living their lives having not tapped into their potential and their power. And if everybody could do things that make their soul shine and they could focus on their strengths and not their weaknesses, the world would be an entirely different place, right? And I feel so passionate about this. And
yeah,
yes, of course, parents have an element of a role to play to an extent. And I think this is where on my journey I've learned, and I've done a lot of emotional work in my time. I've learned to pull out those strengths. I've learned to rewrite the story, to change the ending. But the education system is changing. And they are, when I think about some of the things my boys were doing in year 4, like I was doing that in year 8, and it's this pressure
wow,
to
yeah,
concertina it in. And
yeah,
there's a fantastic author called Carl Honore. He wrote a very famous book called In Praise of Slow, and he also wrote down about stress with children and how it's just this pressure to be the best and to do the best and to, oh, if we got it here, let's do it earlier. So I just feel like, even for me, like I've got A to C GCSEs. What does that mean? In those 6 weeks, I could remember these certain facts. I couldn't tell you a thing about those things now.
yeah,
So I feel
definitely.
like it's just, apart from the fact that generally, even with school system the way it is, you've got to, and this was the big mindset shift with me and my daughter when I knew when she was diagnosed with autism when she was 3 and she shouldn't speak till she was nearly 4. I was like, what is the thing I've got to do? I've got to make my child feel confident. I've got to focus on her strengths. Like she could paddleboard out at sea. She could jump off a
I know.
paddleboard 500 meters out at sea. Can you imagine if we said to the reception class, by the way, we're going to take all your children 500 meters out of sea
Yeah,
because they're like, well, you can't do that. But that's Tabitha's norm. And then you're
yeah,
expecting my child to sit down and they're expecting them to do things earlier and earlier and earlier. And so I think that we need a shake up. The teachers are on their, I went to parents' evening inside the school for the first time since COVID for my boys. They're all on their last legs. I mean, it's not always the teacher's fault, right? The problems.
yeah, definitely, yeah,
And I think it's like there's this fear around, not reaching targets, and we're going at it the wrong
Yeah,
way. And even in the secondary school, my boys, they're having daily reading lessons every day for 30 minutes. They're doing reading lessons every day for every year group. The teachers are reading books to 16-year-olds. They've got certain books they read because they're behind with reading. And I'm like, get me into the school and I'll come. You've got to do it from the inside out. Where's the motivation? Where's the mindset? So I think, like, the school system has changed so much. The draconian stuff that's going on in secondary schools is, I, as you know, do a lot of corporate work as well. And what you're seeing in schools, anxiety, and particularly post-COVID, because we gave our children another option. Ignorance is bliss, right? So I know this is not for everyone, because obviously there are some things that are directly to school, but suddenly people start seeing things a different way. But in corporate, if you can't get into work because you're anxious or stressed, they don't penalize you, they support you. So
exactly.
it's just incredible. And so I feel like, but I do feel, Emma, that although it's a really horrendous time for so many children and so many parents, this is the beginning, I think, of a long overdue educational revolution. And I think what you're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years is the biggest shift we've seen in the education system for as long as we can remember. But it's going to take real strength of parents and children to stand up to this stuff and to challenge everything. I mean, I could go on for hours about this
Yeah.
stuff.
I
And I
mean,
think this is about, if your child's strengths and capabilities are not being pulled out of school, what are we doing? I mean, what
yeah,
are we doing? It's so sad. It's heartbreaking.
I know. And you just, saying about parents, not necessarily, I can't remember your exact words, but like standing up and, a revolution and that. I mean, that is kind of happening with all the parents that are having to deregister, because there's thousands and thousands of children that their parents are deregistering them, sometimes out of choice, often out of choice. A lot of parents on this group will have had to deregister because they just keep getting fined or threatened with fines because their children are too mentally ill for school. It's just one mess, isn't it?
It is. And listen, don't get me wrong. I didn't want to deregister Tabitha. I've
No.
not done this by choice. I mean, I did not do this by choice. This is by default. And I had a real moment of kind of grief. I went to my Tesco's local the other day, not with Tabitha. And
On your own.
there was this woman leaving Tesco. She'd obviously just picked the kids up from school and she'd got, something or other, and they were skipping out and they were happy. And I've had this real sense of sadness
I
because
know.
when my boys were younger, that's what it was like. I was lucky. And I also think, Emma, I was lucky that I had 2 neurotypicals before Tabitha,
Yeah.
because I had the evidence that what was going on with my daughter was
Wasn't
not
you?
my experience before. And that gave me confidence. And also, I coach women, as you know, and I was starting to see huge surges in my coaching practice of mums dealing with girls self-harming,
Yeah.
suicide threats, all of that kind of stuff, major mental health issues, obviously knowing your back of house. And I think because I'm very intuitive and because I'm very impulsive and because I am actually a bit of a maverick myself, I was like, I had this feeling that that I was going to have to do something different. I think I was lucky in the fact that when Tabitha got her EHC a week before lockdown, so she had that. She started school in September 2020. There were, I think without that, I don't think she'd have got through reception. I think I was lucky in the fact that she actually did manage to get through to that point. But this is not what I want. This is not what I want out of my life. I don't want my child, at school for the next, that's it. School's done, basically. My boys are doing their GCs and they're off.
Mm.
But if your child is unhappy and your child's future is being stripped from them because they're leaving school with 2 basic GCSEs, but a whole bag of mental health
I was
issues.
going to say, yeah, it's the mental health issues that they leave with or have, isn't it?
That's not what I wanted for my child. But so it took real courage, and it is not by any means easy. It's better, But I'm having to, goes back to what I said, put your focus on what you can control, forget them. I had to drop into trust. And now I'm completely redesigning my life, completely redesigning it. Is it a compromise? Yes. But because it's with, I'm putting my focus on what I can control. My objective is to get my daughter to become a phenomenal human being and know her worth and everything else. And you've heard me say before, the school was stripping it out of her. Even she went to a red, you know, the Senkos in the schools are crap. They don't know their arse from their elbow. They don't care about these kids. I mean, I work with Hayley, as you know, Hayley Forrest from Forrest Autism Support. And the passion she has for bringing out, the skills of neurodiverse people. But that's the problem, because and then you're gaslit as a parent. You're gaslit in the education system. It's like, I honestly, I know home ed isn't for everyone, but until people, I think, Emma, and I know this is a bit controversial, until more people do it, nothing will change.
No, I mean, we've only got a minute or so left, so unfortunately we'll have to cut. No, I mean, I said at the beginning of this question, you and me could talk about this for ages, but yeah, I mean, it wasn't my choice to take my daughter out. She can't cope with the way it is, and I've had a complete change of my mindset as well. And I don't particularly want her to go back. So we've started our new life. But anyway, I better round things up before it stops. So thank you for being my first guest. Janey is on our group, and if you do want to have a look at her website, it's janeyholliday.com, and I'll put a link to her Instagram and Facebook as well. But she
my Instagram is the Women's Mindset Coach. It's not my name. Well, you can search it, but yeah, the Women's Mindset Coach.
Yeah, I get confused, don't I? But well, yeah, that brings us to the end. Thank you, Janey, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm seeing you next week. Fingers crossed. Bye.